so reassuring. And I love, I'm going to tell you what I learned. Okay. So you reassured us, and now it's our job to reassure them, to teach
Hmm.
them. And you're telling us that they want to know this stuff, that there maybe there's shame and they're feeling awkward. So really, this just as we feel reassured at this moment, they need to feel it in the same way. I love, yeah, the point about boys, the puberty happening more slowly in private, where you might think you see the buddy with a girl, you think, oh, now it's time for the conversation. We just don't know. So
Right.
don't assume. Um, the topic about sweat, everybody knows how, and you explained the science there. I loved the way you described about how it's earlier, but slowly stretching out for such a long. And when you said decade, I sort of caught my breath that oh my gosh, no wonder this topic is so important. Um, and how this can affect, it's and about it's not just the neck down. This is the brain, and how can it affect the mood? Oh my goodness, and ADHD. And of course, we all want to know, why is this happening? And you've described chemicals, perhaps additional weight, perhaps additives in food, the stressors of our challenging times, and the cortisol the cortisol that's produced. And of course, the moods would be happening early. Why wouldn't they be happening earlier? And with this hormone looping, I love that description about the rise and the fall. 1 minute, you may have that old child back again, and then the next minute, you've got a 16-year-old who's 11. Um, they don't like it. They're feeling shamed. So what do? We regulate ourselves so they can feel that regulation from us. We don't engage, and that's the mantra: don't engage, don't engage, don't engage. I love the pivoting, the distracting them, the joke, make a joke. I love being prepared with again, a mantra about, empathy. I feel your pain. This must be hard. This must be hard. It's okay to do a do-over. It's not only okay, it's probably critical for those do-overs. I've never heard it said what you talked about, the decision making, about what you need to do to give them that time, the space, about the thinking about how they can solve this problem on their own. We all know how important it is for them to learn these problem solving, but just this concept about space, have a conversation. Give me 3 things that you would do to give yourself more time. Oh, and then of course, when you talk about how important it is when you're discussing pornography, probably have that conversation earlier than you think you
Mhm.
need to have that conversation, and where to start. That I love the way you reassured us that start with sex, those simple, and then that's your opening, and then go from there. How did I do?
Amazing. You can
Okay,
give
good.
it next time, Gilda.
Well, I mean, I've got the notes that have helped tremendously. So that brings me to a question. Now I'm a parent, and I'm really feeling in that moment disrespected, and hurt and
Mhm.
lost. Tell me, you just touched on this. Give me some vocabulary. What can I do in that moment? Reassure me. Give me the words.
Vanessa, you start.
I think it's really important to remember it's not personal. It feels personal when a kid is shouting at you or a kid is shutting you out. It does feel really personal, but I think it's so important to remember they don't want to be acting that way. They probably don't even like themselves in that moment, that there's all these really powerful forces in their bodies, their hormones, their developing brains, their relationship with peers, which are lighting up their brains in ways we don't. And so trying not to take it personally, we love to cite Eliza Pressman's wonderful two-liner, which is all feelings are welcome, all behaviors are not. So I think reminding a kid that treating you that way is not going to fly, that it hurts, that maybe they need to go take a minute and calm down, and sort of drawing a boundary without invalidating how they're feeling, I think is, I'm not saying it's easy, it's hard, but it's important to not take it personally and also draw a boundary with a kid who's really um, in a tough spot and treating other people around them in an unkind way.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add, I agree with everything that comes out of Vanessa's mouth, and always. But I would just add that a lot of people reach out to us when they feel like their kid has gone quiet and that child really doesn't want to engage. They're giving you every cue in the world. They're shutting the door, they're folding their arms. This is really common among boys in particular, although it can happen to anyone. And there's no data that shows this, but I am convinced that just like we know that testosterone causes rage as one of the mood swings, the other mood swing, the other side of that coin that we see is quiet. It is so predictable among our boys. It is so common. And for parents who have those quiet kids, just show up, just engage in the conversation. My son, I sat on the other side of the bedroom door for about 3 years. And I said, I am here. I'm going to be sitting out here for about 10 minutes. I would love to hear what's going on. And over time, the door opened and I was brought in. Sometimes they just need to know that you are physically there.
I think that is so true. You know, when I think about if there's a book inside of me, the book is titled "It's Not About You." It's
Hmm.
not about you. And I have a grandchild who is that quiet child, and that's also tough.
It's
Hmm.
And it's one of the reasons why our community read next year is Quiet with Susan Cain. That's what we're
Oh,
going to be
I
talking
love that book.
about. So
That book helped me understand one of my kids like well into his childhood. And then I read a paragraph from the book to him, and he goes, Mom, that describes me. I'm so grateful to Susan Cain for giving me incredible insight.
exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. Barb, I know you have a question.
Do. So the information on adrenarchy, if I'm saying that correctly,
Yeah.
was super interesting to me. And I think what was enlightening is Gilda mentioned this already, the 10 that puberty can be going on for a full decade. And my kids are quite a bit older now, but I'm just thinking of other parents, if they're seeing these early signs of puberty taking place in a really young child, how do they address that with them when their mental capacity is maybe really not quite there to understand what is going on?
It's such a wonderful question because it's that dyssynchrony that creates so much confusion for everyone, for the kid, for the peers who, older kids start bringing in a kid who is actually younger but looks older, and that child is then challenged with situations they don't know what to do. Parents and other adults look at them and they're like, they look old enough to understand the consequences of their behavior, or they look old enough to be able to make smart decisions. But as Vanessa says, they can't even pack their backpack. They might look like they're 8.5, but they're 6. So, it's important for us to tease a couple of these things apart. Adrenarchy is sweat and zits and hair, and is truly independent in many ways from puberty. The sex hormones that cause puberty do exacerbate adrenarche. You get hormonal acne, for instance, but in general, the two are really parallel paths. And so if you have a 5 or 6-year-old in your house who has pubic hair, or if you have a 17-year-old who has no chest hair or facial hair or underarm hair, they can both be normal, but it's really great to go talk to a healthcare provider to just get a little reassurance. But this is why it can be normal. It's just puberty and adrenarche don't always travel along the same train tracks. And puberty, I just want to say, because I don't think we mentioned this, but the definition of puberty, it is expansive now, right? So it is the physical maturation of the body, so you're reproductively mature, but those swinging hormones continue for so many years. Anyone who has an 18 or 19 or 20-year-old sees the swinging hormones. So those kids, they may be reproductively mature, but they're still living with all the consequences, the emotional and social consequences of their hormones going up and down. The hormones don't really slow down and steady out until they're well out of our homes, right?
Excellent. Is there a question that you get all the time and oh, there it is again.
Yes.
There's that question.
Yes, I'm going to ask it. Vanessa's going to answer it. Okay, ready, Vanessa?
Yes.
What do I do when I have kids of different ages in my home, but I'm trying to impart information? Do I talk to both of them the same way? Do I pull one aside and have a secret conversation? Help me.
Mm.
So there are certain fundamental things that all kids in your house should know, even your littlest kids, right? Kids on the changing table or in the bathtub should know the names of all their body parts. All kids should be learning about consent. Can I sit on your lap? Can I have a bite of your sandwich? Can I try on your sweatshirt? Right? There's all these ways that we can impart these skills with kids of any age. And frankly, I think talking about changing bodies is doesn't have boundaries in terms of age, because if you have a younger sibling with an older sibling, they're watching their sibling's body transform in front of them. You want to help make sense of it. That doesn't mean you're going into an in-depth conversation about porn or sexual activity with that younger kid. You're doing and talking about the things they can see, they notice, you're helping make sense of the world. When it comes to having, let's say you have a 5-year-old and a 12-year-old, and you haven't had the porn talk with the 12-year-old. So then the 12-year-old probably has access to many more devices. The 12-year-old's friends are being exposed to all different kinds of things. The 12-year-old has the developmental capacity to understand concepts that you're going to explain to them, the world in a different way. So you pull the 12-year-old aside and you say, hey, I want to talk to you about something really important. It's not, you know, you haven't done anything wrong, but I want to talk to you about it because it's actually not appropriate yet for your younger sibling. It's not secret. They're just not ready yet to understand it. It's not your job to explain it to them. I will explain it to them when they get older. It's also not your job to explain it to your friends because different families address different topics at different times. And then you have a conversation. You're making it clear there's no shame. You're making it clear it's not secretive. You're making it clear it's not their responsibility to educate their sibling or their friends. But you're also imparting the knowledge they need to know in a non judgmental way. So we get that question, Gilda, all the time in every single talk. And it's so great for families to know there's lots of stuff they can cover as a family. And then there are shame free ways to cover the other stuff quietly on the side.
Good. That reminds me about recently we heard, and when you're praising a child, do that in private too. This is my last question. Why do I need, we're going to be giving away some books, so people put your email addresses in the chat. We're going to raffle some off. Why do I need to read this book as your final words of the night?
Well, I think, we all need a refresher course. We all need to be caught up to speed so that we can be in conversation with, forget it just about our kids, with our healthcare providers, with our community, with our friends. We need to understand what's happening inside our bodies and outside in our world in order to be able to find support, to find resources. So, I mean, that is the book we tried to write, is a book that really empowers people to jump into tricky conversations. And yes, it's very much about puberty, but frankly, a lot of the rules of the road that we've provided apply to every corner of your life.
Yeah. This is the book. These are the experts. Barb, thank you so much for being here tonight. Cara, Vanessa, thanks for writing the book and thanks for joining us at GPS tonight. This is where we go hug the kids. So that's what we're going to do right now. How should we hug them? Hug them, and what should we say?
You know what, Gilda? This is a great place to end, which is hug them for sure. But don't dump the information that we just shared on them right before they go to bed, because that will result in a do-over. Let me just tell you. So take some time, let this stuff marinate, figure out how you're going to get into conversation, but don't be like me. I'm the person who gets off the Zoom where I've learned something amazing and I'm like, kids, we got to talk about it right now. No, you don't.
Oh,
you don't.
Beautiful. Beautiful. We'll pace it out. Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thanks.